The garden was always my sanctuary. Each morning, as the light spilled softly over the horizon, I would slip out of the house before the world awoke and tend to the flowers that had become a living tribute to my husband's memory. The scent of earth, the feel of damp soil clinging to my hands, it all reminded me that life, even with its sorrows, found ways to persist. My fingers traced the delicate petals of the roses, their crimson faces glowing in the autumn chill. The air was crisp, and a quiet stillness stretched over the house, as if the whole world held its breath with me. I thought often about him in those moments, how he would have smiled, maybe teased me for spending too much time in the garden, but I didn't mind. His absence was a hollow space in my days, a silence that weighed heavier as the years passed. The house, once filled with laughter and the chaos of family, felt quieter still. Sometimes, when the wind carried it, I imagined hearing his voice in the rustling leaves. That morning, the sky was a pale wash of gray and gold, signaling the subtle turn of the season. My mind was drifting through memories when the phone rang. It was a sound I had learned to welcome cautiously, wary of sudden disruptions, yet hoping for familiar warmth. The caller ID flashed Matthew's name. I felt a flutter of relief, a connection to one of my children, still tethered to the family I cherished so deeply. "Mother, I hope I'm not bothering you," his voice came, a mixture of urgency and practiced charm. He always had a way of sounding earnest, like a boy who still needed his mother. "Not at all, Matthew. Is everything all right?" I asked, wiping my hands on my apron. There was a pause, then the explanation unfolded. He was asking for help, appealing to me to support a charity he was managing. He spoke of children in need, of a program that would bring education and hope. His voice held all the hope a son might wish to instill in his mother, and I believed him without hesitation. Perhaps it was the remnants of trust, or simply my nature to give. "I want to help," I said softly, already picturing the checkbook resting on the kitchen table. The thought of aiding those children, of somehow contributing to their futures, warmed the cold ache inside me. Later that day, I sat by the window where the light spilled over faded floral curtains, the pen poised over the check. My hand trembled slightly, not from doubt, but from the quiet power of investing in what I thought was good. I wrote the amount without reservation, sealing my faith with ink. Days passed, the routine of my mornings undisturbed, except for the growing anticipation of updates about the charity. Then, one chilly afternoon, a reporter's voice cut through the television's hum in the living room. I had left the news on, a habit to stay connected, and suddenly the words struck me with such force that I sank into my chair, my breath caught in my throat. The story was damning, an exposé revealing Matthew's charity as a sham, a carefully constructed lie designed to siphon money without delivering a single promise to any child. The very foundation I had entrusted crumbled before me, a betrayal so intimate it was hard to breathe. Images of smiling children were replaced by dollar signs and falsified reports, and the reporter's tone left no room for doubt. I wanted to scream, to reject the truth that had invaded my safe world. The weight pressed heavily upon my chest, a tightness that blurred my vision and made the room spin. How could Matthew, my own son, cloak himself in deceit like this? Had he ever cared for the family's values I had tried to instill? The realization was a stab, cold and sharp, eroding years of hope and pride. In the days that followed, the house felt colder, the silence heavier. I replayed their faces, Matthew's confident smile, Jenna's quiet ambition in my mind. The bright facade of what I thought was a loving family fell away, revealing fractures I had been too gentle to see. I remembered how Matthew had always sought validation through wealth, a hunger that no mother's love could satisfy. And now, that hunger had turned into a dagger in my heart. I barely spoke, too wounded to find words. The betrayal settled deep inside, a shadow that darkened my mornings as much as the autumn skies. Yet beneath the sorrow, beneath the shock, a faint flicker of clarity began to burn. The greatest threat had come not from strangers, but from within these very walls. The truth was bitter, but it was also a beginning, a harsh awakening to the reality I could no longer ignore. The days after that chilling revelation were heavy, a dense fog of silence settling over my once familiar home. The house, which had been a haven of warmth and shared stories, now echoed with the absence of trust. I moved through its rooms like a ghost, the weight of Matthew's betrayal pressing down on me, each step a reminder of love twisted into deception. Mornings no longer brought light and hope. Instead, the gray dawn seemed to stretch endlessly, mirroring the shadow that had taken root within my heart. Sleep became a stranger. Each night, candled by the quiet ticking of the clock, I lay awake wrestling with memories that had once brought comfort, but now felt like knives slicing through my resolve. Matthew's face haunted my dreams, not as the boy I had cradled, but as a man consumed by a hunger I had failed to see. His eyes, once bright with innocent ambition, now gleamed with something cold and distant. And Jenna, her name had become a bitter aftertaste, a silent partner in his schemes whose gentle smiles masked a ruthless greed. Their true selves had been hidden behind curtains of smiles and civil conversation, but deceit had its way of peeling back all illusions. In those long, still days, I found myself questioning everything. Was I blind to the signs, too trusting, too hopeful? The self-doubt was relentless. Had I been mistaken to believe that love and sacrifice were enough to shape character? Those questions gnawed at me, but with every bitterness came a simmering ember of clarity. My life had been built on quiet strength, the same strength that helped me raise children, steady a faltering marriage, and carry on after my husband's passing. That strength had not disappeared. It had only been waiting for a moment to assert itself again. I reached back into the years, allowing myself to feel all the sacrifices sown so quietly into my days, the endless nights of working late while my children slept comfortably, the worn smiles exchanged between my husband and me when stress soured the air, the gentle words I whispered when Matthew cried for approval or recognition. It had all been for them, my family, my legacy. And yet here I was, wounded by the very son I had loved and nurtured. It hurt deeply, but the ache was not enough to break me. Instead, it became fuel. Silence, once suffocating, grew into a powerful companion. In that quiet, I began to chart a new path. Returning to the garden, I found solace in the ritual of tending the blossoms, each petal a quiet testament to resilience and hope. Watching fragile buds unfold under my care, I realized I could do the same for myself. From the ashes of pain, I could grow. Then, the estate that my late husband had entrusted to me came sharply into focus. Amidst the turmoil, I recalled his careful planning, a network of investments, assets prudently managed in the background, shielded from the everyday chaos. I had been more than a passive observer of those affairs. I had quietly kept track, learning, storing knowledge like a hidden treasure. Now, that knowledge was a lifeline, a tool in my hands to reclaim control. Plans began to take shape slowly but surely. I would gather every piece of evidence that exposed Matthew's lies, not just for the satisfaction of truth, but to ensure justice could be enforced. Then I would seek the counsel of a trusted lawyer, someone who understood both the tangled webs of family relationships and the intricacies of legal power. Tony, an old friend of my husband and a man of sharp intellect and quiet steadiness, came to mind immediately. He would be my ally, the steady hand guiding me through what could become a labyrinth of confrontation. I knew this would not be a battle fought with noise or rage. My strength lay in patience and precision, the kind of power exercised through silence and unyielding calm. Each moment of reflection reinforced that truth. I would not shout, nor would I allow anger to cloud my judgment. Instead, I would watch and wait, letting the truth reveal itself fully at the right time. Behind a composed exterior, a storm of purpose was gathering. I rehearsed the masks I would wear, serene and unshakable. No one could suspect the fire that burned just beneath that calm. That fire was a promise I made, to myself and to those who witnessed the cruelty of deceit, that I would not be broken. Revenge would not be spectacle, but a measured unveiling, a clear showing of the truth that could not be denied. I thought deeply about the family I had tried to hold together, about the loyalty, the love I had given so freely, and how fragile those bonds had become. This was not just about money or stolen charity funds. It was about reclaiming my dignity and my place within a family fractured by greed and lies. I owed it to myself and to the memory of my husband to stand firm. As the days shortened and the chill of early winter seeped into the air, I felt the warmth of newfound resolve. The house, though filled with memories of pain, now stood as my fortress. I was no longer the broken woman defined by betrayal and loss. I was a mother reborn in strength, a quiet force to be reckoned with. With every sunrise, as frost sparkled on the garden's edges, I felt the faint stirring of hope and empowerment. The wounds of betrayal remained, but they no longer held dominion over me. Instead, they became the driving force behind a silent revolution, an awakening born not of anger, but of patient and unshakable strength. The first step toward reclaiming control was to seek out the one person I knew could guide me through the complex maze that lay ahead. I reached for the telephone with a steady hand, dialing Tony's number, the lawyer and longtime friend of my late husband. Despite the tumult swirling inside me, my voice remained even as I laid out the painful truth. "Tony, it's Eleanor. I need your help. It's about Matthew." There was a pause on the other end, and then his familiar, reassuring tone. "I'm here. Tell me everything." The gravity of my confession settled into the silence between us, and I slowly unfolded the story of deceit. The charity exposed as a sham, the betrayal by my own son, the financial manipulation that threatened to dismantle the life I had quietly built. Tony's response was tempered with the wisdom of experience. He promised discretion and, more importantly, a methodical approach. We would devise a strategy not fueled by emotion, but by evidence and precision. I felt a flicker of hope. This was not a road I had to walk alone. Gathering the documents was the first tangible act of defiance. I sifted through the files painstakingly preserved by my late husband's meticulous hand. Investment portfolios, bank statements, letters. Each piece revealed more of the sordid tapestry Matthew had woven behind my back. Transfers were redirected, balances fudged, funds vanished. The evidence was undeniable, and every paper in my hands became both proof of betrayal and ammunition for justice. While painful, the process was also empowering. I was no longer a victim of circumstances. I was the architect of my own redemption. With each document reviewed, I felt a steady strength grow within, a quiet but unbreakable resolve. But facts alone were not enough. I had to restore the honor that Matthew had sullied. I immersed myself in research, connecting with legitimate charities, organizations that embodied the values I had long championed. Their open books, transparent missions, and measurable impacts stood in stark contrast to Matthew's fabricated enterprise. Quietly, I pledged my support to these real causes, sending money where it would do good, speaking softly to their leaders, and weaving a new network of integrity beneath the shadow of deceit. Every action I took was deliberate, measured. Gone were the days of reckless trust or emotional impulsiveness. My life had been built on patience, Years of nurturing, enduring, and persevering. That same patience now became a formidable tool. As the gala approached, the glittering backdrop where Matthew intended to bask in unearned praise, I saw an opportunity rather than a threat. The glittering ballroom, the expectant crowd, the spotlight waiting for deceit to take center stage, it all became the perfect stage for truth to rise. Tony and I gathered every detail, the list of attendees, the sequence of events, the key moments where exposure would hit hardest. Behind calm eyes and composed smiles, I prepared myself to be invisible and yet unmissable. To those watching, I would be a humble mother attending a charity event. Beneath that exterior, I was a silent force, ready to reclaim my story. At the same time, I turned my attention to the estate. The legacy my husband had built was more than just a collection of accounts. It was my foundation, my safeguard, and my leverage. Carefully, I arranged for significant donations to the legitimate charities I had researched. Each gift was more than money. It was a quiet statement, an act of cleansing the stain Matthew had left behind. I was restoring not just funds, but honor. This process carried a deeply personal weight. I thought of the family I had devoted myself to, the love and loyalty I had given, the sacrifices I had made to shape a legacy of integrity. That legacy had been threatened, but I refused to let it vanish into the wind of greed and deceit. My desire for justice was tempered by love, and even as I prepared to confront the lies, I aimed to rebuild what had been broken. In public, I remained the composed widow, carrying myself with grace and dignity. To friends, I was the picture of patience through hardship. To myself, I was a strategist, quietly piecing together a future where truth would be the ultimate victor. As the night of the gala neared, anticipation flitted beneath my calm exterior. I rehearsed the demeanor of serene confidence, a composed presence that belying the storm of purpose beneath. I was not there to shout or accuse, but to let the undeniable truth take center stage. Each passing day sharpened my resolve. The bitterness of betrayal morphed into a fierce, patient determination. The woman I had been, hurt, saddened, betrayed, was transforming into someone stronger, someone ready to rise without fury, but with unwavering strength. In the stillness of preparation, I found unexpected peace. The pain of loss had not crushed me, it had refined me. I was ready to reclaim my dignity, restore honor, and rewrite the narrative of my family. Beneath the calm surface, a silent revolution had taken root, quiet, strategic, and resolute, born from a mother's love that refused to be broken. This was more than a battle for money. It was a fight for truth, for justice, and for the power that comes from patience and unshakable strength. I was prepared to witness the unfolding of a story long suppressed, a story where the quiet voice of a mother's love would finally be heard. The morning light filtered softly through the curtains, casting a pale glow over the room where I prepared myself for the evening ahead. The chill in the air hinted at the deepening winter, but inside me a different kind of fire burned, a fire steeled not by anger, but by resolve. I dressed with deliberate calm, selecting a gown of understated elegance, something that spoke of quiet strength rather than spectacle. It was essential, I reminded myself, to remain composed, to blend seamlessly with the crowd while holding the truth close to my heart like a silent, unyielding weapon. As I stepped into the car that would take me to the gala, the city's morning bustle seemed distant, insignificant against the tide of emotions I had long contained and carefully shaped into purpose. The house had already yielded to the festive preparations, the grand chandelier sparkling, the delicate hum of anticipation drifting through the high ceilings. This was the stage that Matthew and Jenna had long rehearsed for, the world he had crafted to bask in adulation and hide his deceit. But tonight, that world would shift. Entering the gleaming hall, I allowed my eyes to wander over the crowd, faces brushed with charm and concealed motives, voices low with polite conversation, the shimmer of expensive fabrics mingling with the scent of perfume and fresh flowers. Here, generosity was performed, and appearances carried more weight than truth. I took my place among ghosts of the past and whispers of the present, the very walls standing witness to the betrayal I was about to expose. Matthew was there, a figure of confidence and practiced charm. His smile was impeccable, the kind carefully molded in front of mirrors and rehearsed before audiences. He believed himself untouchable beneath the carefully curated facade of success and benevolence. Jenna's gaze flitted sharply around the room, a mask of composed ambition that barely concealed the calculation beneath. They were oblivious to the storm of truth gathered quietly in the seats nearby. I watched him take to the stage, voice smooth and measured, weaving tales of hope and kindness that felt as hollow as the promises I knew he had broken. The room responded with polite applause, smiles fixed, some faces sincere, others veiled in cautious suspicion. His narrative was a house of cards, ready to collapse with the slightest breeze of revelation. When my moment arrived, I stepped forward with the calm assurance of one who has carried burdens too long and now enters the light without fear or hesitation. The envelope I held was weighty with the proof of truth, not just paper and figures, but months of painstaking work unveiling deception. "My esteemed friends," I began, my voice clear and steady, commanding attention with quiet authority. "I stand here as a mother, but also as a witness to harsh reality. For too long, a polished illusion has masked a trail of lies and betrayal." Whispers passed through the crowd like a wave, uncertainty rippling through eyes fixed upon me. Matthew's smile faltered, disbelief curling his lips before the shadow of panic darkened his gaze. Jenna's composed exterior stiffened, her jaws tightening in a silent attempt at control. I presented the evidence: discrepancies in financial records, missing funds, falsified reports, and recounted the betrayal not just of donors' trust, but of countless children left in the cold shadow of false promises. "This is not charity," I declared, softly but with unyielding conviction. "This is exploitation dressed as goodwill. I have chosen to support those who uphold values of truth and impact, and I urge you to join me in exposing this deceit." The room breathed in stunned silence. The confident man who had taken the stage fractured before them, the mask slipping as the weight of truth bore down. Whispered conversations tangled and grew, the illusion of respectability dissolving like mist. Jenna's attempt to intervene, to soothe and protect her collapsing world, fell flat against the undeniable facts laid bare. The audience's murmurs swelled, a tide of realization sweeping through the grand hall, fragmenting the carefully built facade of generosity Matthew and Jenna had erected. I stood firm, my gaze steady and unwavering, holding not only the eyes of my son, but the attention of those whose actions might now bend toward justice. The proud arrogance that had once surrounded Matthew was replaced by the cold shiver of exposure, shame clinging to him like a second skin. Having spoken my truth, I stepped away, the weight that had bowed my shoulders for so long lightening in relief. This moment was not fueled by anger, but by the patient and strategic pursuit of justice. The gathering's atmosphere shifted, a mix of sympathy, shock, and newfound respect. Supporters approached quietly, their voices low and sincere, offering alliances formed in trust and shared purpose. The charities I had stood behind gained renewed attention, their legitimacy shining brighter in contrast to the shadows I had dispelled. Conversations turned toward rebuilding, toward ensuring that truth and trust would be the foundation of future efforts. The remainder of the evening passed in calm exchanges and measured speeches. I spoke privately with those who held influence, ensuring the facts were understood, readying them for action. The truth had been unleashed, no longer confined to whispers and shadows. Later, seeking solitude, I found myself in the cool night air outside, the garden bathed in moonlight and a gentle silver glow. The flowers, resilient against frost and wind, seemed to mirror the strength that had blossomed within me. The path ahead was uncertain and steep, yet illuminated by the clarity of purpose. This night was more than a victory. It was a beginning. The storm had passed, leaving behind a woman renewed by quiet strength and unwavering conviction. The silent revolution I nurtured was no longer a secret. It was growing, expanding beyond the walls of betrayal. Tomorrow promised new battles, fresh challenges, and the task of rebuilding what had been broken. But tonight, I embraced the peace born from standing tall in the face of deceit, the strength that a mother's love, tempered by patience, can summon when truth demands to be heard. The weight that had bowed my shoulders for so long seemed to lift in that very moment. I stepped back quietly, leaving behind the scene where truth finally held its place in the light. The atmosphere around me shifted palpably, a wave of reactions washing over the crowd as the facade crumbled and a new, raw reality took hold. Sympathy, shock, and a grudging respect unfolded in hushed tones, whispered confirmations of the justice that had been long overdue. One by one, guests approached, not with accusations or bitterness, but with quiet whispers of support and understanding. Their voices were steady and sincere, offers of alliances formed in shared purpose rather than conflict. The charities I had championed, those real, living organizations dedicated to genuine change, received renewed attention. Their legitimacy, once overshadowed by my son's false claims, now shone brighter in contrast to the shadows I had dispelled. The conversations turned toward healing and restoration, discussions focused on how trust could be rebuilt in the wake of deceit. There was a tangible energy beneath the polite facades, a readiness to act, to support causes grounded in honesty. In that gentle groundswell, I recognized the beginning of a movement, one seeded with patience, nurtured by truth, and destined to flourish in integrity. The remainder of the evening played out in a rhythm far removed from the chaos I had once feared. Discussions were calm, measured speeches offered in ways that carried weight because they were rooted in reality. I found myself speaking privately with influential figures, men and women whose decisions could affect real change beyond the gala's glittering walls. I shared with them the evidence, the facts distilled over months of careful collecting, and the plan for moving forward. The truth had been unleashed. It was no longer confined to whispers in dimly lit rooms, but spoken openly where it could no longer be ignored. When the event finally wound down, I slipped away seeking solitude. Outside, the night air was cool and crisp, the garden bathed in the gentle silver glow of moonlight. I walked slowly among the flowers, their resilience in frost and shadow, a reflection of the strength that had blossomed within me. Each petal, each stem standing strong against the bite of winter, felt like a testament to endurance and quiet courage. The path ahead stretched out, uncertain, steep, yet illuminated with a clarity born of hard-won understanding. I was keenly aware that what had begun tonight was more than simple victory. It was a beginning, a turning point where the storm brought by betrayal had passed, leaving behind a woman renewed by quiet strength and unwavering conviction. In the stillness, I thought of the journey, how far I had come from the broken woman weighed down by deceit to the woman who now stood tall, armored not with anger but with patience and purpose. The silent revolution I had nurtured was no longer confined within the walls of my home or the depths of my heart. It grew, pushing beyond the boundaries of betrayal, touching lives and inspiring hope. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, fresh battles to fight, and the hard work required to rebuild what had been broken. Yet tonight, I embraced a profound peace. It was a peace born not from forgetting the pain, but from standing tall in its face, stronger because of it. I understood now that a mother's love, tempered by the fire of patience and sharpened by truth, could summon a fierce strength capable of changing the course of her life and the lives of those she adored. In that garden bathed in moonlight, I whispered a quiet vow, one not born of bitterness, but of hope and endurance. I would keep fighting, keep rebuilding, keep loving. Betrayal might have birthed my strength, but it would never define the woman I was becoming. As the stars twinkled softly above, I felt ready to face whatever came with steady heart and clear mind. Ready to claim the future, shaped not by the lies of the past, but by the power of truth and the enduring strength of a mother's love. The quiet of that night felt sacred, the moonlight casting soft silver shadows on the garden paths where I walked slowly. The flowers, brave against the chill of early winter, seemed to mirror the resilience I now felt coursing through me. Each petal, each stem stood tall, unwavering despite the frost's bite, a symbol of endurance shaped by time and care. In their steadfastness, I found comfort and a reflection of my own journey, from despair through betrayal to a quiet, unwavering strength. The path before me stretched uncertain and steep, but it was illuminated by a light that came not from without, but from within, a clarity born of hard-won understanding. I knew this night marked far more than the end of a painful chapter. It was the seed of a new beginning, a turning point where grief and disillusionment gave way to renewal. The storm brought by betrayal had passed, but its lessons had left me armored, not with anger or bitterness, but with patience, wisdom, and purpose. Sitting quietly in the garden's embrace, I thought about how far I had come. Not so long ago, I was broken, crushed beneath deceit, weighed down by the silent agony of betrayal. Yet today, I stood tall, transformed by the trials that once threatened to undo me. The silent revolution I had nurtured, this slow unfolding of truth and reclaiming of power, was no longer confined to the walls of my home or the depths of my heart. It had grown beyond my private pain, touching lives, inspiring hope where shadows had settled. I understood now that strength is not always loud or immediate. Sometimes it is the quiet, deliberate choice to endure, to observe, and to wait. To gather courage with patience and channel it not into vengeance, but into justice and healing. What I had once thought was my vulnerability had become my greatest asset. Tomorrow held new challenges, fresh battles that I must face, the long and difficult work of rebuilding what had been broken. Family trust, personal dignity, even financial security. These were the foundations I needed to fortify, slowly and steadily. The path would be difficult, and the scars of betrayal would remain long in memory, if not in heart. But now I was prepared. I was steady. I no longer feared the uncertainties ahead. Tonight, though, I embraced a profound and rare peace. It settled deep within me, not the false peace born of forgetting or running away from pain, but the true peace that arises from standing firm, even when the wounds are raw, even when the future remains uncertain. It was a peace born from knowing that I had fought with patience, with wisdom, and with truth, that I had refused to be silenced or broken. I whispered a vow to the night, a vow not born of resentment or bitterness, but of hope and endurance. I promised myself I would keep fighting when needed, keep rebuilding what was lost, and above all, keep loving the family that remained and the life I was courageously reshaping. Betrayal might have birthed my strength, yes, but it would never define the woman I was becoming. Beneath the quilt of stars twinkling softly overhead, I felt ready to face whatever the coming days would bring, with a heart steady and a mind clear. Ready to claim a future shaped not by the deceit of the past, but by the undeniable power of truth and the unbreakable strength nurtured by a mother's enduring love. The night stillness wrapped around me like a gentle shroud, And in that quiet cocoon, I allowed myself one smile, a small, knowing curve of lips that spoke of resilience, renewal, and unspoken promise. The journey ahead would be long, but I would walk it with grace, courage, and unwavering hope.